our growth hormone starts dropping, by the age of 30. Most of us are in about a 10% deficit. By the age of 40, it's 20%. And then by the age of 50, our growth hormone just goes off a cliff. Growth hormone can be pretty darn expensive. It's, if you're on it at the prescribed dose, it's about $20,000 per year. And so they found that using these secretagogues, you could get the same results with far fewer side effects, and it's a fraction of the cost. Using growth hormone releasing peptides, you still get the autophagy, you still get the clean out, you still get this activation of AMPK, which is a secondary bypass for activating sirtuins, cleaning up the DNA, and it's a secondary energy system to ATP. But you still get that, whereas if you're on just straight growth hormone, you don't get as much of that.
Welcome everybody to the Health Accelerator Challenges. This is your host of the day, Cade Archibald, and I am excited to be here with everyone. Along with me, we got Regan Archibald. Regan, how's it going?
It's going great. Yeah, good to be here.
Awesome. Well, let's see. Last week, we had a really good hack. We were having some tech issues, so you weren't able to join us, but it was awesome. We talked about some of my favorite peptides, which was tesmorellin's like my number one. Hopefully everyone needs a chance to just try that one out and just feel like you're He-Man. And then along with that was thiamine beta 4. Get rid of all the muscle soreness so you can work out like crazy and not even have to deal with the soreness. So those were kind of what we talked about last week. And then the challenge was for you guys to send in or think about what you would tell yourself 10 years ago as advice on your health. And so I'm curious how the challenge went for everyone. Type into the chat box what your advice to yourself would be. I think mine would be get on more peptides. I think exercising every single day, more peptides and get some really good exercise every single day. That's been a really good one and a game changer for me.
Yeah, that's great.
Everybody type into the chat box. Esther says, nutrition and exercise matter. I wish I knew now what I know now. Love that. Thanks for sharing.
Wow. Yeah. Beautiful. Well, it's kind of like Warren Buffett, when he was asked, he was, I can't remember what college, it was like Oxford or somewhere. And one of the 21-year-olds in the audience, this kid said, well, what in your life would you be willing to give your fortune up for? And Warren Buffett thought about it and he said, well, how old are you? And the kid said, I'm 21. And he said, I would give up my entire fortune to be 21 again and know what I know now. And so isn't that true? Esther, is if we could go back in time 10 years ago and just like transmit all the knowledge that we have, wouldn't that be amazing? And so, I think same thing, but I believe there's this wisdom inside each one of us. And if we can learn to tap into that more frequently, then we can start to set up this life that we really love and enjoy. And you can really start setting up your health so that it's, not only is it, improving every year, but you're, really excelling at everything you're doing. So, and so that's the topic for today is we're going to continue on talking about some of the growth hormone peptides and what happens to our bodies as we age. So this is great. And it looks like, Bev says I'm nutritionally healthy now, although age creeps up. Yes. Let's jump into today's. So growth hormone is, and we're going to be spending just a little bit of time kind of diving into this. because I believe it's one of the most, it's easy to overlook, but in our Accelerate Wellness programs, this is the central focus behind the reset phase. Is very first thing we're resetting is that hypothalamic pituitary adrenal axis. That's what, we want to pull your body out of that fight or flight response. And then we want to remind your body how to make growth hormone again, because just like cortisol is your alpha hormone, and all the other hormones in your body, if the stress hormones are high, all the other hormones get dysregulated, and they basically get under optimized, so that cortisol can either, if it's too low, so your body can slowly calibrate it up, or if it's too high, it brings it down, because cortisol is the only hormone in the body that clears up inflammation. And so it's a really important hormone. But just like cortisol is kind of that, that's the hormone that everyone's like, it's kind of like when the principal in school comes around, everybody's kind of on their best behavior. Well, growth hormone is like the optimizing hormone. It's the alpha hormone, in the way that it's more of a master hormone. So it's more the master of the symphony, or the conductor of the symphony. And the thing I love about growth hormone when it's optimized is you feel just pretty amazing. And so some of the studies, if you look at the history of growth hormones, you can see that, as we age, our growth hormone starts dropping. By the age of 30, most of us are in about a 10% deficit. By the age of 40, it's 20%. And then by the age of 50, our growth hormone just goes off a cliff. And I was just talking to one of our clients today, and she's a super fit, healthy 50-year-old, but she just turned 50, and she's like, I can't believe it. And she said, in the last 12 months, my back started to hurt. I just don't feel as good. My joints don't work as well. And it's not uncommon. And so, by 60, it drops more, 70 more, 80 more. I love this picture because we've got 50 in there twice. So go 50, 60, 70, 80, 90. By the time we're in our 90s, we have like 10%. But growth hormone, one of the things that researchers have done for years is, how can we maintain a healthy level of growth hormone? And that's a real key thing. So it looks like Bev chimed in. Thanks for commenting here, Bev. Yeah, avoid many foods, but today my hemoglobin A1C is now 6.1, pre-diabetic, so 71. Yeah, well, keep going, Bev. You're going to get there. And so with these growth hormones, secretagogues or secretagogues, they're first synthesized in 1977, because once researchers, it's interesting. I've been doing a lot of, I'm reading a book called 10 Drugs, and it's like the 10 categories of drugs that shaped modern medicine. And it's pretty fascinating to see how it all plays into history. And if it's appropriate, I'll weave some of the historical context in. But hormones became big, in the 50s and 60s, when birth control became a real big thing, where women wanted to work and they wanted to prolong, having kids so that they could learn professionally and get into the labor field. And so, but at the same time, medicine was really, especially the AMA, the American Medical Association, women were really frustrated because, men could get on like a drug like Cialis, which came on the market in like 2003. And that was covered by insurance, but birth control wasn't until the Obama administration kind of signed that in. So whatever your thoughts are on that, but birth control was very controversial back in the 50s and 60s and even 70s. But part of the uncovering of birth control is there's a scientist who realized that when a woman's pregnant, she can't get pregnant again. And so he said there must be something in the body that happens when a woman's pregnant. And so that led to all this research on all the hormones, and that's where growth hormone was first identified. And then researchers went in later and started looking at, for kids who aren't thriving, there's a loss of growth hormone. And so they started to kind of uncouple these secretagogues, and they realized that there's different ways that these growth hormone peptides bind to the brain, and that they work through the pituitary and the hypothalamus to stimulate the release of growth hormone without the negative feedback loop. And so they found that using these growth hormone secretagogues, or growth hormone releasing peptides, were far more effective than using growth hormone itself, so that you don't have that negative feedback loop. Because what happens is, if you give a kid or even an adult growth hormone, then the body stops producing its own growth hormone, and that puts you at pretty severe risk in the future if you ever go off growth hormone, which growth hormone can be pretty darn expensive. It's if you're on it at the prescribed dose, it's about $20,000 per year. And so they found that using these secretagogues, you could get the same results with far fewer side effects, and it's a fraction of the cost.
Well, the growth hormone secretagogues, they're more timed release rather than constant. Like, if you're doing growth hormone, you're going to be like really ramping up your growth hormone, and that has like some negative downwind side effects as well, right?
Yeah, big time. Because really, growth hormone, like you think of sarcotropin, we'll use that one. That is going to be acting for about 30 minutes. And so it's, to your point, it's not a timed release. It's it's a quick little pulse of growth hormone. And if you use ipamorelin, then it inhibits what's called somatostatin, which is the hormone that turns off growth hormone as we age. So somatostatin just gets stronger and stronger and more of a bully as we get older. It's like, hey, Cade doesn't need more growth hormone. He's past his reproductive years. He's useless to us. Send him out. Like, we need a new one. We need a fresh human. But Cade's like, well, I still feel like I'm 20. Let me in. Like, come on. And so that's where somatostatin, if you just calm that hormone down, then growth hormone can really get activated pretty quick.
So you're saying somatostatin is like taking you out to the pasture. That's that hormone.
That's it. Yeah, it has really positive functions too, because if you have growth hormone all the time, then you're going to get cancer. And so part of the reason why somatostatin's there, and you can see it in this diagram, for those of you who are watching it, is, somatostatin's there so that you're not always releasing growth hormone. Because, I think everyone's probably seen Princess Bride. If you haven't seen that legendary show, you got to watch it. But Andre the Giant, he didn't have somatostatin. And so his somatostatin function was broken. And so he just got huge. And so he died super young because it wasn't turned on, even though he's my favorite wrestler of all time.
Yeah. Well, and that makes sense. Like, too much growth, you go too much of anything is typically too much. So it's the AMPK, and then that mTOR pathways. It's a delicate balance. And so, but when you have using growth hormone releasing peptides, you still get the autophagy, you still get the clean out, you still get this activation of AMPK, which is a secondary bypass for activating sirtuins, cleaning up the DNA, and it's a secondary energy system to ATP. But you still get that. Whereas if you're on just straight growth hormone, you don't get as much of that. And so that's some of the benefits. But one of the things that they found is growth hormone secretagogues in certain patients who had diabetes and wasting and thirsting disorder is kind of what the title of the study. They found that the administration of it increased the appetite in the lean subjects, and so they actually ate more. They also found that it improved hypoglycemic tendencies, and it helped in weight gain in women with anorexia nervosa. So it's a really positive treatment with anorexia as long as you're doing some conjunctive therapy with it. Very interesting. That's cool.
Yeah, the other one is if you think of one of the big risks, the known causes of aging, one of the things that happens as we age is our bodies go into the sarcopenic state where muscle gets replaced with fat. And I think if you don't believe believe me, you can look at your arms and you can say, man, if you're in your 60s or 70s and you get what, I can't remember, the flebdubiters is what Andy calls it. Yeah, that's a definite, that's one of the big symptoms that you get from it. But it's really dangerous because as you lose muscle mass, now your joints have more pressure on them. So, you're going to need more, support, because your joints, your balance is going to be off, your power is going to be declined. And so it's a big condition. But what they found with these growth hormone releasing peptides, or secretagogues, is they found that it can combat catabolism. So anabolism is, like anabolic steroids is when our body builds muscle. Catabolism is when we lose muscle. And so what they found is men with chronic illness had suppressed pulsatile growth hormone and luteinizing hormone secretion. So this is where, like, if you use like tesamorelin, ipamorelin with gonadotropin or gonadorelin or kispectin or enclomiphene, this is really important. And they also found that they had low serum levels of IGF-1. I just met with a patient today, and he had really low levels of IGF-1, and his brain was turned off, and he just was not, he wasn't feeling good at all. But it also, they find that men with chronic illness had lower levels of TSH, so thyroid stimulating hormone, lower levels of T3, lower levels of T4, and then lower total and free testosterone levels. And so, chronic illness is really important. And so one of the things that these growth hormone releasing peptides do, like MK677 or CJC1295, is what they found in the studies is that the treatment by using growth hormone releasing peptide, in this particular one, they use ibutamoren mesylate, and they found that it actually improved these levels. And they actually found that it slowed nitrogen wasting in the catabolic state. And so they found that the calorically restricted healthy young volunteers were given ibutamoren, which is the growth hormone releasing peptide 2, or placebo. And they found in the ibutamoren, or the growth hormone releasing peptide group, showing a preservation of nitrogen balance. And they showed a 29% increase in the osteocalcin. So that's they also found a 10.4% increase in bone specific alkaline phosphatase. And they found a 22% increase in the telopeptide, in the urinary N telopeptide. So they found that the kidneys got healthier, the bones got healthier, all those, those bone releasing hormones like the osteocalcin, those all improved. So pretty interesting, just by increasing that growth hormone peptide.
Really interesting. We had a question come in on, when you lose muscle, do you lose weight? And absolutely, like, muscle is pretty heavy. And if you're converting that into fat, you could potentially even lose weight if you're converting all your muscle into fat, because muscle weighs more than fat. But yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, and the one caveat is can you lose muscle, or if you're losing muscle, you can lose weight, but you could also, if you're retaining water, you can actually, that can be a way you can actually gain weight and not gain muscle. You could actually put on fat, put on water. So yeah, there's, multiple ways of looking at it, but one of the safest ways to have healthy body composition, because, I think to your point, Cade, bring it up, is like, weight is so subjective and irrelevant, especially if you look at the body mass index. Like, that thing has been thrown out of the window, because, you see someone who's like 210 pounds and they're 6 feet and they're considered obese. And you're like, well, they're ripped. They have like 10% body fat. Like, it doesn't make any sense. So that thing's been gone. But one of the reasons why we use these growth hormone releasing peptides is because they can actually help convert that fat into muscle. And in one of the studies, they actually found that the increase of lean muscle, they found that participants who used the GHRP2 and GHRP6, that's in these peptides are specifically in the sarcotropin formula. They found that they put on 3 kilograms of increase in lean muscle mass. And they lost, so it was 3 kilograms, that's like 6 pounds in a couple months. That's pretty substantial. And then they lost, just over that amount in fat. And so they also found in the long-term use of the growth hormone versus placebo on body composition, this is in people who have the Prader-Willi syndrome. They showed significant fat loss and an increase in thigh muscle and lean body mass. So the thighs are where you're going to get a lot of production of growth hormone, of testosterone. They also found that daily butyrate increased growth hormone and IGF-1 levels to those of healthy young adults without serious adverse effects. And they found that there was no differences in total loss of blood sugar or hypoglycemia. They actually found it stabilized it. And they also found with growth hormone releasing peptides that they improve cholesterol and they improve sleep. And the sleep pattern is pretty interesting because they looked at the delta sleep waves specifically, and they found that using the, and this is where they were using intravenous GHRP6 during sleep, they found that it increased serum growth hormone, ACTH, balanced cortisol levels, and they found that they were in a stage 2 sleep without altering the slow wave sleep pattern. So they found that there's no significant changes for any of the patients in the placebo group. So pretty interesting if you're looking to improve your sleep. This is where I think one of the biggest things I've learned over the last several years of using these is that I notice that I get a much deeper sleep using some of these growth hormone releasing peptides. And that's one of the big challenges that we have as we age is our brains need that glymphatic circulation detoxified. And that's what sleep does for us, is it replenishes those reservoirs. Today I had a client who came in and he was just really busting it, started a new company and was raising kids when he was in his 40s, and he thought he could live on 5 hours of sleep. And then he started having seizures. And so he realized, he went to his doctor, and the neurologist was like, well, you're having seizures because you're not sleeping. And so yeah, that's pretty interesting. Cade, do you remember the dude who I've talked about, who the chain smoking guy who wanted to go see if he could watch the entire World Cup without sleeping? And you remember that story? Yeah, 3 weeks and he just massive seizure, died.
Got to get sleep. That's when your body recovers and repairs.
Yep. Yeah, pretty crazy. But yeah, they found that young adults treated with ibutamoren, 25 milligrams, showed a 50% increase in stage 4 sleep and a 20% increase in REM sleep compared to placebo. Older adults showed a 50% increase in REM and a decrease in REM latency. So they're able to get into it easier. They found that these growth hormone secretagogues, they appear safe with few adverse events. They found that there's no adverse events with congestive heart failure. And so blood glucose, hyperglycemia were examined with no serious issues there. So I think, of all of the cool things we can do for our health, if you look at the safety of using some of these growth hormone releasing peptides, study after study just shows that there's just some very positive benefits. There's positive benefits that have been studied with MK677, and we can talk about these more on the next Health Accelerator Challenge. But one of the things that I would certainly recommend for each one of you is doing some things naturally to increase your growth hormone, because we talk a lot about these peptides and how great they are, but you also want to think about some of the things that you can do naturally to improve growth hormone. And so one of the things that is a really positive way to improve it on your own is get to bed at 9:30, wake up at 5:30. And most humans need about 6.5 to 7.5 hours of sleep. Don't need much more than that, but you want to spend about 8 hours in bed. It's a really important activity. And that's been shown to increase growth hormones. Specifically, it's the hours that you go to bed before midnight that can really help improve it. ESTA, of course. Yes, high intensity interval training. Sprint 8. Tell me about Sprint 8. Sprints are one of the best ways you can increase growth hormone, because you're activating every muscle in your body more so than any other exercise you can do. But tell me about the Sprint 8. But yes, high intensity interval training is a great way of increasing growth hormone. Getting out in the sun 2 hours a day, especially when the sun's rising or as the sun's setting, are great ways of increasing growth hormone. These are all awesome things. And then the other thing is making sure that you're recovering between workouts. That is one of the best ways. So, Cade, do you know what Sprint 8 is? Do you mind looking that one up? Yeah, fasting. One of the best ways is
minimum time, 3-minute warm up, 30-second sprints, 90-second recovery intervals. Very cool. I like this.
That's great.
Some different workouts with it, but yeah, very HIIT-based workouts.
You can add L-arginine to your diet, or add that, L-citrulline, L-arginine help boost growth hormone. But then, the other way is, making sure that you are getting some good fasting in. So that's where that timed eating is really important. So yeah, so that's awesome. Sprint8.com is where you can find the information on that. Do that 3 times a week. So this is really good. So your challenge for the week is which are the natural ways are you going to increase your growth hormone? Are you going to do high intensity interval trainings? Are you going to sleep better, sleep deeper, sleep more? Are you going to use some growth hormone releasing peptides? How are you going to increase your growth hormone, and what's your long-term strategy for it? So, the one thing about, blood flow restriction, that can do it. There's a really cool, study. Cade and I have met Peter, the inventor of the Vasper machine. And if you use pressure and cold exposure is another way to increase growth hormone. So, and in the podcast tomorrow, we'll go deeper into a little bit more on the growth hormone and some of these natural ways. But hopefully you guys found that kind of interesting today. One of the master hormones in your body that can really help you look, feel, and perform your best. Coming up, we do have our retreat coming up July 27th. And we have a few spots left for that. I think we have 3. And then our August retreat is getting filled up very quickly. So that's August 24th. Love to have you guys out for a longevity retreat then. And then we won't have our next one. We have so many events going on in September that's really exciting. And then our next one will be October 12th. So make sure you get out to those. Really appreciate you guys. If you haven't had your blood work ran in a certain period, as if it's been more than 6 months, make sure you get on that. And we have a no death by neglect policy around here. So be looking at our website for some great information on our longevity blood panel.
Yeah, or just give us a call and we can help you out with that. 801-582-2011. Awesome. Thanks so much, Regan. Awesome content. And if you haven't been to a retreat, you got to experience it. It's so amazing. So just want to follow up with call us, get registered for that. You can also go to acueastwest.com/retreats to learn more about those. See everybody. Thanks a lot.
Bye-bye.